one space. So today we're going to talk about digital portfolios, specifically with Google Sites, but certainly any of the topics that we talk about today can be applicable to any web platform that can be used for portfolio development, blogging, things of that nature. So if your school has a specific platform that you use, don't worry if it's not Google Sites. But the examples I have today are Google Sites examples, and I'll take you into Sites and just show you some key components of it that will be useful for portfolio building. So hello again, I recognize a lot of you, and thank you as always for coming to our sessions. My name is Lynn Hilt, and I'm a program administrator at Berks County Intermediate Unit, and we're excited that we're still able to meet with you and share these sessions. We know that the schedule has been a little bit lighter. We're trying to be cognizant of your time, your energy levels at this point, knowing that you have a lot of year-end wrap-up to do, and we're getting ready to kick off some summer learning opportunities next week. So stay tuned for all that good stuff. But if you have any questions after the fact, please email me, lynnhill@berksiu.org. For me, this is a topic I'm really passionate about. I am a firm believer in the power of documentation of learning. So looking at it through a lens of assessment and a way that is a more authentic practice for students to show what they know. Somebody that I will reference probably 14 times in this slide set is Sylvia Tolosano. And if you're not familiar with her work, you should definitely check out her blog, her books, her resources. She is a go-to resource for me in the world of documentation of learning and portfolio work, and also blogging. And she says, when we make documentation part of our learning process, we become more aware of details and nuances, we reflect deeper, we learn more about ourselves as learners, and we make thinking and learning visible that otherwise would have been hidden under the surface. And so we were really looking at this idea of portfolio development as documentation of learning, which is a reflective practice, a formative practice, and just helps kids be more in sync with their own learning, their own growth, and their own achievement. So if we're looking for a definition of what a portfolio is, and I know lots of you have experience with portfolios, back when I was in the classroom, my first experience with portfolios was the district gave us a list of things that had to be in each child's portfolio, and then that got passed through year by year by year. So lots of times it was things like a student writing sample, or like a cumulative math assessment or something like that. In that situation, that was used primarily to track growth and to inform the next year's teacher. It did not involve in any way student ownership. And I think that portfolio work has come a long way in that regard. Helen Barrett is another educator who's been in the digital portfolio space for a long time. She defines a portfolio as a purposeful collection of student work that tells the story of student achievement or growth. And I like looking at portfolio building as a storytelling process, having the student be the lead character, let's say, in that narrative, being able to shape and define how it grows and how it evolves over time. And I also like that she includes the word purposeful in the definition of portfolio. So I think when we're thinking about why should we include this portfolio process in our courses or in our classes, it should have a clearly defined purpose. And it might look very different for your students than it does for someone else's. And that's okay. There's no one right way to portfolio. I think talking about the key components of portfolios, things that you'd like to include, thinking about that. Primarily, you're looking for a space that can organize evidence of learning over time. So it's something that you want to make sure kids can access regularly and easily and that has a simple, clean interface that they can manipulate or use without a lot of teacher support or parent support. Because again, we're looking for it to be a space where they're able to take ownership of that. Certainly, we want it to be a space where they can add a number of different types of media. If it's pages that they've written, so maybe linking to Google Docs, maybe it's images or designs that they've done, artwork, work samples. Maybe they're creating things in other online spaces and they can embed those products in their site. Video creations, and really just look for that versatile digital space that allows for many different types of embeds. Another key component you can consider is this idea of collaboration. And maybe when you're starting with portfolios, and we're going to look at an example of one that is actually the culmination of a group project. So the students built that together. So finding tools that support collaboration, and also finding tools where the teacher can provide feedback on the portfolio or co-create in a way that supports the students. And I'll admit, it is hard to find a lot of public examples of student portfolios. And many reasons for that include that some districts have decided that they would like to keep them private to the school district Google accounts, for example, or shared with family members only, like a parent email address. So as you're doing your research and you're looking for other examples, don't be frustrated if you can't find a lot, because I think a lot of them are behind closed walls, which is fine if it meets the purpose, but also don't forget that having a portfolio can serve as an evidence and a connection to others in the world. So giving the students access to an authentic audience who can view their work is a really great opportunity. Sylvia says the content of your digital portfolio needs to be seen as either an attempt in learning, so actual putting together learning, evidence of learning, so what have you learned and what are you showing me here, the process of learning and or growth in learning. So you can see it's very learning focused. It's not just the manila folder we're slapping finished work into. We want to develop it into a space that is primarily growth focused and learning focused. This documenting for learning infographic that she created is just really a look at all of the key skills that come into play and all of the purposes that documenting for learning can serve, just more than you really think at first glance. So in terms of pedagogy, strategies, approaches, and techniques teachers use to facilitate learning, you're asking students to pull on that metacognition piece, the reflective piece, and you're learning about making thinking more visible and infusing the modern skills and literacies. For example, how many of your students are fluent with writing with hyperlinked text? It's something that I do all the time in my role, and it is likely going to be something that they're going to need to do in the future, and it is the future of writing. If you read any online journals or online newspaper articles, there's hyperlinked text throughout. So those type of specific modern literacies too are infused in this work. Storytelling, annotating skills, having the space for self-directed types of learning experiences, actively sharing their work, reflecting on that, are really important opportunities for kids. The other opportunity you have is connecting this whole portfolio process to other opportunities. So Thinking about those cross-curricular relationships, if you're a science teacher or a history teacher and you want students to start building out comprehensive portfolios of what they've learned, how wonderful will it be if you make that connection to your literacy teacher, your art teacher, and together in that portfolio space, you can show the relationships among your different content areas. You can list artifacts of learning and make that learning come to life in those spaces. We talked earlier about making sure that students know the purpose of the portfolio, and that's something that you want to determine when it's time to introduce this idea to students. So there are a couple of different types of portfolios, and they have different names, and you don't have to call it any of these. You can call it whatever you want, but typically the first type is a growth portfolio. And the whole purpose of that would be to demonstrate change over time or growth over time. So you're starting at one point in time, and your purpose would be to end it at a segment later, whether it's end of the semester or end of the school year. And you want to be able to take a look at what was created and see evidence of growth. This helps students develop some of those key habits of mind, like goal setting, so they can see where they are at the start, and they can think about where they want to be in alignment with learning outcomes and standards and mastery targets, and they can set goals with you. And it will help you as a teacher team kind of identify where students are and where they need to go. And it helps you track the development of the student over time. Sometimes these are used during student-led conferences, which is another great aspect of having that portfolio. And it really emphasizes the process of learning versus products of learning. Next, we have showcase portfolios. They are designed to showcase accomplishments of student or work samples that they find primarily that they're prideful about. Sometimes they're used to prepare a sampling of work for the admissions process or for a student exhibition or to be accepted into a certain type of program. So it's really more of the student determining what the best examples or their favorite work that they wish to showcase or their most important work. So you can see the difference in purpose between a showcase portfolio and a growth portfolio. There are many opportunities as well for portfolios to be entirely student passion based, where the student is building this body of work based around what they're interested in. So it may or may not have anything to do with actual academic content, let's say. Of course, it always will in some way, but maybe not on the strict scope and sequence. But they are communicating their interests, their passions in that space. And then evaluation portfolios. So these portfolios have the intent of, from the start, documenting academic achievement with learning artifacts and documenting progress toward meeting standards and mastery. So you're using the portfolios as a tool to ultimately deliver some kind of evaluation of how the students are progressing through their programming. And as well, maybe you are designing portfolios that are a little bit of everything, and that's okay too, as long as the purposes of the portfolio creation process are clear to students. Just make sure that they understand why we're doing this, how they can take ownership of it, give them as much agency in the process as possible in terms of design and the types of work that they can select, and always be able to give them that rationale and develop that rationale with them. When we're looking for what types of documentation should we be including, the artifact itself may take many forms, but it should always primarily be focused on the student's experiences, thoughts, and ideas during planning, execution, and completion stages of work. So unless you're building a purely showcase portfolio that only has the very finalized version of the work, it's great, especially with a growth portfolio, to be able to submit evidence of learning across a continuum, to be able to see where the student was at the start in the draft process, how they grew as a result of peer conferencing, with teacher editing, with continued revisions, and where they ended up, and giving kids the opportunity to reflect along the way. They should include things that are interesting and engaging, and it should be intentional. It shouldn't be a matter of going into the Google Drive and grabbing something that they wrote and then throwing it into the portfolio. Intentional choice of artifacts. We want to see learning in progress, creativity, thinking processes, not just finished products. And ultimately, what that portfolio should do is help give others insight into the thinking of the student. Now, portfolios are something that can be, it's especially digital portfolios. This is a kind of a timely space in the world for this, because if we're thinking about transitioning back in some way, shape, or form, but maybe not every single day, you're looking at a portfolio as an opportunity to keep that connection with students, even when they're not in your presence, so they can be submitting, designing, building out their portfolio space, even when you're not together. So it's something else to consider. So the question becomes, well, why should we use Google Sites? And there are a couple of reasons why. First, if you are a Google for Education school, you have that automatic integration with Google Drive and many other Google apps. And if you've not seen the Google Sites platform, we'll take you in there in a minute, just kind of show you what's available. And Sites is a core G Suite app, so you can feel comfortable about using it with your students. And of course, Google Sites is easy to use. You can create as many sites as you want to in your account. Google Sites is now incorporated into Google Drive. It's not a separate place like it used to be. So students can create multiple sites if they have multiple purposes for their portfolio work, and they can then keep them all saved in their Drive. They automatically save, which is nice, and you can determine specific publishing settings that meet the needs of you and your students. There's also a new templates gallery for sites, and I linked to it here because it's easy to miss. For example, if you don't go into sites often, when you get there for the very first time, I recommend going to Drive, going to New, and then down under More, you'll find Sites. However, the other apps have these little arrows that you can use to get to the templates, and Google Sites does not yet have that built in. So when you click on Google Sites for the first time, when you're launching a brand new site, a pop-up is going to come down at the bottom, and it's going to say, unsure where to begin? Try a template. And here's the link, visit template gallery. I guess it didn't want to take me there. I linked to it on our slides. Let's get back to the slides. You can also use the link to my slides. It should take you there if you're signed in. All right, so here are the templates. I have some information about the templates in the slides. For one, this is a very kind of sparse, let's say, template selection at present. There are much more templates, many more templates available for docs and sheets and all that good stuff. So right now there's just a basic selection, but they will hopefully add the ability for you as a district to save templates at the organizational level. Because in the other apps, docs, sheets, forms, slides, you can actually save templates to the template gallery specific to your organization. So at that moment, it would be so easy for students to click on that template that you've designed and just give them a nice starting point for the things they need to include in their site. But if you would like to scaffold the process for them, if you want to design a portfolio template, and let's say you set up the main pages that they have to include, I would leave the theme up to them, to be honest, just to give them a lot of agency. But if you want to determine, like, you must have these 5 sections or these 5 pages, you can build that, and then you could share it. So you could share it with other students as an editor, and at that point, they can duplicate the site. And once they click duplicate site, they'll be the owner of that new site, and they can go from there. And I'll show you where all that is. So here's my kind of untitled site. Here are the triple dots, and that's where they would duplicate this site. I don't have anything on the site, so there's nothing to duplicate. But if you're new to Google Sites, I recently did a Google Sites session, and if you're using my slides, these are all of the intro slides to Google Sites, and you can review those as well. They have some screenshots so you know where to start, where to go. It has some navigation toolbar directions, things that you should know about the themes and all that good stuff, and we'll definitely take a look at some of that. The templates that are available that I think would make the most sense for student portfolio work would be portfolio or also class. My advice about templates is that sometimes it actually takes more work to redesign a template the way you want to than to start from scratch. So it's really up to you and the student to decide how much work you want to put into redesigning a template. We can go into the portfolio just so you can see what it looks like. Having a little lag time today. It's always alarming. All right, so it has kind of a title space here. It has a picture pre-populated, and then it has a heading, selected work, and it has some what we call placeholders already popped in for the students to click and add. So if they want to add a project, they could click here and add it. If they want to add a slides presentation, they can click here and add it. So this has all kind of been pre-populated. There's a home, there's an about, and there's a project page. And those are the pages that have been pre-populated for the students or for the user. So you can see how if you didn't exactly love this, you would have to either rearrange this, rename it. Again, so sometimes it's easier to start from scratch. Let's take a look at the class template. So this is more like a class website, but it could certainly be turned into a student portfolio. I like that it picks a theme. You can go in there, and this is currently the impression theme. So with one click, you could change the accent color. Students have space that they can pop in and they can change anything. These are all placeholders with captions. Here's an about me, resources, links. There's a schedule page and a newsletter page. So if you were going to start from a template and you wanted to rename any of these, maybe you would call it math projects. So I'm going to click properties, and instead of newsletter, I'm going to call it math projects. And you can see that updated the name of it on my navigation. So I have it here. Now what it did not do is change this heading. Anytime you see anything inside Google's sites, just go ahead and click on it. You can change the name of it. So this would be Lynn's portfolio. All right. You have a couple different heading options. You can choose just a title. You can choose a large banner, a smaller banner, or if you are doing a showcase portfolio, or students are, and they want to have a very kind of distinguished looking cover, that's what you would choose the cover photo for. I'll just go back to large banner. Anytime you have the blue borders around the text or the object, you can grab these little circles, you can click and drag, you can grab, it's hard to see on that, but there are little boxes or dots, there's 8 dots, and that allows you to drag and drop in different locations on the space. And whenever you're editing text, you basically have 4 choices. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 5 choices. Title text, and in this particular theme, it throws a bold line underneath. Heading, subheading, you can go normal size, you can go small. And those are your options. There's no wasting time with picking all sorts of different fonts or anything like that. If you don't love this font, you can go into themes and you can pick a different style of font. But other than that, you get what you get and you don't get upset, which is, you know, exactly what we need for student portfolio development, because we don't want them wasting time trying to like fancy this up in a way that takes away from the whole purpose, which is to showcase their learning. All right, so let me jump in from scratch because I want just it to be cleaner while you're looking at it. So we looked at the heading space and we looked at the themes. Again, you have 6 choices and you can choose an accent color and you can choose a font type. And then aside from that, you're kind of locked in. It starts with a home page. And if you go to the pages menu, this is where your building starts, okay? So down at the bottom, there's a plus sign, and that is how you create a new page or a new link. A link will list the name of something, usually a website, on the right-hand side, and when the visitor clicks on it, it will take them directly to that link. So it's actually an external link. So I'll just do new page. Of course, all portfolios should have an About Me page. So now we're at About Me. I can change this image. I can select an image from their library of images that they have, or I can go into a Google search and I can search for an image that way, or I can upload something that I have saved. What it's going to do after you upload an image, it's going to adjust the readability. And sometimes it will put like a darker shade over top. Sometimes it will change the color that you have. And it's always working to make this as readable as possible to make sure that the content gets across. Now you'll notice when I added another page, now I have a navigation bar. And the navigation bar is default to the top of the page, but I guess portfolio, it seems correct. But you don't have to keep it up here. If you click on the sidebar icons, and what you're going to learn is that as you're manipulating different parts of the site, different little tools are going to pop up on the left-hand side. So we're going to choose navigation, mode, Maybe we want side navigation instead of top. So now I would have to use the triple lines to get around. So you might be asking, well, this is fine if my students are building on a desktop, but what is this going to look like if they're using another device like a phone or a tablet? And that's what the preview button is all about. So when you click preview, you can see what it would look like on these devices. This is a large screen, like I knew if there was an extra O in there. If there was a desktop version, this is what it looks like on a tablet, and everything is fully live, so I can click and I can visit. And then this is what it looks like on a mobile device, on a phone, which is pretty cool. So you can see this is built to be responsive in its design. When you're ready to exit the preview, you just click exit. So you'll be able to test everything out, make sure it works properly. So that's the pages menu. If at any time your students are building out pages and they want the page to exist, but they don't want it to be in the actual navigation, that's what hide from navigation means. So sometimes we have pages in the background of our core connections site, for example, and we don't want them listed on the sidebar because it's just so many pages. So that's when you just hide it from navigation. Here are all the things that students can use to start to create their portfolio. So all the pieces of media that can come in to their work: text box, images, stuff from their Google Drive, and embeds. Now, I usually don't use this section of the insert menu. I usually just go to my white space and double click. And when I do that, I get the wheel of fun, as I call it. So the wheel of fun just has everything you need all in one space: uploads, images, drive, embed, and text. And that just happens with a double click. It couldn't be easier. So double click, add text. Welcome to my website. Actually, welcome to my portfolio. I am excited to show you what I've learned this year. When you're manipulating text, now you notice I have all of these text features here. Again, we're back to our 5 settings for text styles, and those will relate to the theme color that you chose and the theme font style that you chose. And it'll adjust. It's not going to delete anything if you make changes. You can choose custom colors as well, so you don't have to pick from the ones that they have. Here you can also do your alignment. You can link to other sites or to other pages in your site, which is great. You can, again, grab and drag if you want to move things around. Double click, maybe add an image, maybe add, actually, let's do a Bitmoji. We'll say, let's see what comes up today. Oh, I'm not logged in. Boo. Okay. Images. We'll just do like a hello clip art. See if something fun. That's fun. Hello. Insert. And just like with text boxes, grab those little blue guys to readjust. Now you'll notice it does this auto crop thing, which I actually hate. But if you click this button, uncrop, it'll settle it back to where it belongs. So now we have kind of our opening space. Every one of these is called a section. So these two things are in the same section at present. And I can take this paint palette and I can change the section background with one click. There are 2 emphasis colors that match your theme color. And there's also an image upload. You could put images at the background of your section as well. All of the sections can be rearranged. Let me go ahead and pull something out of my drive to add to my portfolio. When you go into drive, you're going to see exactly what you would just see in your drive. So I'll just go into my classroom folder. I'll go into one of my students, my pretend students, they're not real. See if there's any work inside any of these to add. Here we go, writing assignment. And when it comes in, you can do a couple of different things. You can make this really like full sized if that's how the student wanted to display their work. Or you could do something like put the little previews of the documents here, because what happens when you're looking at this, we'll go back to our preview button. You're going to see the document here. And if a reader would like to see this more in depth, there's always this little arrow leading out, and they can click to open it in full screen. So when students are building their portfolios, they can feel free to put something like this, like full size, and you just read the document right in there. There's also there'll be a scroll bar so visitors can scroll down and read it. This is probably a little bit small for most people reading, but there will always be that opportunity to open it in a new window, which is nice. Because if you're considering that on a tablet, this is going to be a little bit smooshed, and then on a phone, even more so, more difficult to read. So let's close that up. So again, double click from Drive, pull it in, double click images, double click embeds. There's also more options on the insert menu. Something that I love for consistent design purposes are using the layout features. So a lot of times on the Core Connection site, we'll post a video and a title and a description. And so these preset layouts let you design a really clean looking page, and you just simply have to click the plus sign to add any of the things that you want to put in there. So if your students made a screencastify and they saved it to Drive, or if they made a video and they hosted it on YouTube, you can search for that, and then you can pull that in, and there will be very little kinds of rearranging necessary because it will fit to the layout. This is clearly an important video to put in your in your portfolio. Please watch to see how I explain how to blow out your candles. So there's plenty of opportunities with these layouts for text to accompany the media. So students can write explanations or put titles for their work, rationale for including it in the portfolio, and all that good stuff. They just come in all different shapes and sizes. And if you would prefer, you can also use placeholders where you can just click the box. And same thing, you can resize this just to make everything the right size that you want. Now, what I want you to see is what happens when I start clicking, dragging stuff around, because this takes some getting used to. If I take this and I drop it in the middle where that blue bar is, it will create a new section. So now this heading has its own section. If I take that and I drop it directly under that placeholder box, those two things are now, they have become one with each other. They are now one object. And so now if I grab it when it's blue all the way around, I can move all of that to a new section, okay? If you get them stuck together and you're like, no, I don't want these to be stuck together, then just click until just one of the items is selected, and then you can move that away from the other thing, okay? So that is a little tricky sometimes. So again, when you see those long blue lines, that's creating a new section for you, okay? Other things you can add dividers to your page. You can add buttons. So you would say, visit my, I don't know what they would have, my blog to read more of my writing. And then you could have the students link to some other creation they have. And these are buttons, so they could put that anywhere. They could also use buttons for more sophisticated navigation if they wanted to put that together. Now, I know this is about student portfolios, but I'd also recommend sites as a teacher website building platform. Or if you're doing graduate work and you need to build a portfolio, or if you build a teacher effectiveness portfolio, if you have to put evidence of your learning throughout the year, this is a great space for that. If you decide to use it for a classroom communication tool, Calendar, this is so great. I love just being able to click on calendar, finding the calendar I want to add, and then clicking insert. And since Google Classroom syncs with all of your calendars, you could actually add any calendar for any specific Google Classroom. It would show all of the due dates that are assigned. And so if you had a website for a specific course, for example, you could link that calendar directly to your website, which is awesome. You can pull in a Google map, and then of course all of your core G Suite apps as well. So the question becomes kind of, how do we want to share this? Because maybe we just want to have it shared with a particular person. So let's click shared with others. Maybe the student is just sharing with me and maybe a handful of peers. If so, they could go ahead and just add people. If they want to change, and this is something you'll notice about Google Sites, is that there's a couple of different link access permissions that you have to look at. So let's click change. Right now, the only people who can edit my work are people who I've invited. And right now it's nobody, it's just me. But there's also a setting for who can view the published site. So right now, only people inside BCIU with a BCIU Google account can view my website. So if I don't change that and I decide to publish it out to the world, unless you have a BCIU Google account, you won't be able to see it. So you have to click on this and you have to decide, do I want it to be restricted, which is only people I add can open it with the link that's created. So maybe you add the teacher, the counselor, the principal, the parent email address, whoever the child would like to share that with, that would be restricted. Or if they want it to be completely public link, where you can send the link anywhere and someone can view it, that's what you would choose here with viewing privileges, okay? When you go to complete your publishing process, you need to pick the end of the URL that's going to be created. This is a big deal, in my opinion. It can be changed after the fact, but if you've already linked to it places or shared it, that can be kind of a pain. So I would come up with a consistent way of having students name the end of their URL, whether it's like first initial, last name, or just initials, and then the word portfolio, or, you know, something that is consistent. What the rest of the website will have is sites.google.com/your domain, whatever your domain is named in your system, / the title that you come up with. Okay, so think about those naming conventions before you start. Also think about, if you're having students create different types of portfolios, they're gonna have to name each one of them. So what do you want that to look like? This end URL won't affect the title. They can title it anything they want. So it's just a matter of coming up with that slug at the end to make sure that it is consistent and not too wordy, I guess, if that makes sense. All right. So let me jump back to my slides for a bit. I think that, you know, as you play around with slides and with templates, you're going to find a lot of opportunities and just ease of use for students to build upon it. It's also worth thinking about that each year, especially if you're working with primary students and they're not adding a whole lot. Each year you could add a new page and you could really have like a running record of all of their work. So here are some example portfolios that I pulled. A lot of these are for upper grade students. I'm not saying you definitely can do this with elementary, and I'm just saying this is, like I said earlier, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to find them because they're locked down. So this is graphing math. This is Andrew's knowledge. That's what Andrew called his work. He's got a 7th grade and an 8th grade section of pages going on. So it looks like this was something that went through in his middle school years. He has a little about me information here. So let's go to math. He's got some content that he took pictures of and uploaded. I don't know what page I was looking at. Maybe it's just, here we go. System of equations. So here's his work. There's like marks on there from his teacher. His personal reflection. I learned how to graph system of equations, and he went through what he did. Here's what he accomplished. This task was difficult. The benefits of completing this assignment was ... So he's kind of going through. So here's like some open and honest reflection that he was disappointed because he got a C, and he is thinking about how to do better next time. He said preparing more. He said, I felt relieved when finishing this assignment. So it looks like his teacher gave them some reflection prompts as well, to make sure that they were able to work through that reflection. We can't have kids just automatically know, or we can't assume they automatically know how to reflect. And so giving them that scaffolded work is really important. So here's a piece of literary analysis, character development, and then here's the personal reflection that he added there. All right. So we have Amy's House of Cards. Again, middle school student, same setup. These are from the same teacher, kind of sharing their work. I think maybe they started in 8th grade. So here's some of her English work. So they list the unit name. They have work from drive into the space, reflection pieces on that. And so you can see how it fits in. All right. There are examples of a science project. So this is the students, let's go to her home page. So this is her AP physics course information. This is about her. This is her picture. This is cool. This is a page all about herself as a learner. So what are some of her strengths? So this is a learner profile that she completed and filled out and added to her portfolio. So if I was her teacher in the future, I would know a lot more about her and some of her strengths. There is a page for her passion project. So what was her research? What did she research? Looks like birdhouses creation. She listed some research, her progress that she's making through that. Now, here's a good point. This might be published, but it might not be visible to us. So when your students are including documents, creation, slides from their Google Drives into their portfolios, if it's something that you want viewable outside the domain, you have to share it outside the domain as well. So if you're looking for a public facing portfolio that anybody with the link can view, all the stuff that's included has to be shared that same way. So keep that in mind, okay? Then they went through kind of the sections of the science practices, the models, just taking some pictures of the actual work that they're doing, building this out in probably something like slides or Google Drawings, explaining their examples. They did this drawing as part of their conclusion for the lab. Here's some mathematics practice work. So this whole portfolio is evidence of her thinking and her questioning abilities, her creation abilities for her physics class, her AP physics class. I also like how they have the practice named at the top and then the skills that they're expected to acquire through this work. can pull in data tables, can pull in pretty much anything that is applicable to the portfolio needs. So this is one that's limited to a specific course. And there's another example of that here. Here's one that's all about, oh, that's the same class, another physics portfolio. I want to get to one that, and feel free to browse through those. Here's one that was created to support a school trip. So if you and your students ever go on, an academic trip that involves a lot of different pieces, this is like a field investigation trip for 8th graders. So there's an about page, there's daily journals that students completed. This is a couple years old, so some of this stuff might be broken, but you can see each day how students are responsible for documenting their thinking and adding it there. There's journal assignments related, there's resources and links. These are all the things that you need to do kind of during it. So if you, I just thought this was kind of ingenious to organize thinking in a creative way around an actual event or series of events. So think outside the box for that too. All right, and then this one, this particular school has their students create websites for the different years. These are all different schools. And so when you go there, you can see the list of, I guess it depends on the school. Apologize for my lagginess today. These are all the students and these are all their work. So Women in STEM, encouraging girls to pursue STEM careers. Here's her work. So these are her, this is from, they have the school icon on here. This is one of those awesome cover photos. Look how nice this looks. So here's me, this is what I'm doing. Here's my interest, here's some slides. This is a voiceover she added, audio. You can add audio clips as embeds from Vocaroo. I have examples of doing that as well. And this just has some awesome stuff. These are drop downs, so you can actually create those drop downs in on the sidebar of your site. When you're here, that would be called collapsible text. And you basically have the heading here and then the sub content here. And when you view it, it looks like a collapsible menu item. So it's just trying to keep things cleaned up and such. So definitely check out especially if you're a secondary teacher, the list of things that you can have included in a section. Here she used buttons. I mean, her design is really kind of on point there. So we have those examples for you to look at. If you're here and you're an elementary teacher, just translating what that might look like for you. For sure, I might build them a template that they can copy, and I might kind of pre-build the pages that I want for them, and then just have them learn how to insert things and get that all together. So for the assessment of this whole process, which of course is always going to be a question, well, how do I assess this? In my opinion, the portfolio itself is the assessment process when done well. But there are certainly things that you want to do to put a system of checks and balances in place for students, have checklists available. Perhaps you'll use rubrics or single point rubrics for them to reflect on the work. There are a number of examples that are out there that you can look at, whether you use just exactly what they have or whether you take pieces from it. For me, portfolio loses its meaning when we start throwing numerical grades at it. I'd rather see it more of self-evaluation, self-assessment, assessment as a partnership process, but that's not to say that you can't have students kind of judge their own work in a way that helps them see, yeah, I'm exactly where I need to be, or I'm actually going above and beyond, or I'm not quite there yet. So giving them the tools to think through that, there are a number of different options here that you could look at. But again, making sure there's opportunity for self-reflection and self-assessment in that process. So I'd love to open it up for questions now to wrap the session. And as always, bit.ly/IU14 session feedback. I'll make sure this session is on the drop down for the form. I always forget that usually when Joseph is involved. So if anyone has any questions, I'm going to wrap and stop the recording, but then I'll open it up so you guys can take over the mic. Oh, I also have a lot of other additional resources here that you can check out, using them with student-led conferences. A lot of people sharing their own experiences with using Google Sites as well. So thank you so much.